So yeah, the one thing I would recommend, if you understand diffusion, it's the same reason a big block of ice will take literally a couple of weeks to melt. If you've got a big one like a size of an IBC, like a 250 gallon, 1,000 litre sort of a block of ice, it may take a week to melt. But if you had the same in small ice blocks, you know, it'd all just sort of go in like an hour or half an hour, you know, during 70-degree days and stuff like that. Or maybe a bit warmer, but that's, you know, diffusion. It's the reason that radiators have little thin tubes, not big fat ones, because it's easy to cool these things by having everything very thin and small. And with that same thing in mind, if you're having trouble getting your small freezer to freeze ice packs, or before you buy them, consider getting very small ice packs. Now, there's ones I got that are that thick, like they're like about, you know, they're nearly 2 inches thick, and then there's other ones I've got that are literally half an inch thick. And with them only being half an inch compared to 2 inches, you know, they'll freeze a lot quicker and it'll be a lot easier. You know, you'll get them frozen faster than you would if they were thicker. That's the theory of, you know, that's diffusion in action. And at the same token, they may, you know, sort of lose their cool quicker. But, you know, you will get them frozen a lot faster in the first place, which is good if you just sort of, you know, don't have maybe you get to go to a certain place every week. It might be golf club or whatever, and or your parents' place or whatever, and you get a chance to use your little tiny freezer and just go, oh, yeah, my mum, if I just plug this in the wall for, you know, and you only be there for 2 or 3 hours, but you'll freeze those things, you know, in, you know, 4 hours or something like that. You'll have them frozen, and in that time, you know, if you've only got a limited time in which to use on-grid power, or to use the fridge at lunch, the freezer at work in the lunchroom, then, you know, you've got the task achieved, sort of thing, in the small amount of time that you do have to get access to either electricity on grid or someone else's freezer. So yeah, that's another bit of food for thought. Now, on conserving fridge space, I've realised that if I don't have much in my fridge, it doesn't run very much. I've heard the exact opposite with people's freezers. To enable the freezer to keep cool, they had a freezer with nothing in it. It ran and ran and ran. It's driving nuts. It run so much. They were on a battery bank with generators. This is way back in the 80s. And they keep flattening the damn batteries because this freezer was running all the time. And the way they got past it was stick a bunch of buckets of water in there, and it would freeze the buckets to ice. And then by the time they had basically full of these buckets of ice, the freezer wasn't running as often. And you wonder why? The reason being, the ice was holding a thermal mass. Like it was sort of, once it's frozen, it retains cold, and basically by a big lump of frozen ice, or a number of big lumps of frozen ice being in there, they sort of hold the rest of the inside of the freezer cold. They keep the rest of the inside freezer cold, and it stays at that. I don't know if there was a leaking seal on this, like a broken seal on the freezer or what. But what I do know is when they put all those buckets of ice in there, they essentially acted as a thermal mass and kept it frozen. So you're better to have full freezers, I've been told that. But what I realised with my solar fridge is, on a cool day, it rarely runs. On a hot day, it's going all the time. If I've got a lot of stuff in there, it goes all the damn time. If I've got very few things in there, it doesn't go very much in the same amount of heat I'm talking about. So if I get a day that, say, for instance, is 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and, you know, it'll run a little bit, you know, a bit when it's got not much in it, but I go and put a massive blooming, you know, cabbages and thises and that's and bang, 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 a soft drink, whatever, in the fridge, and it'll keep starting up all the time. Which, after being told the freezer story first, before I got my fridge, I thought it'd be the same with the fridge, but it turns out it's not. So there you go. But another thing I want to say is, you can go a bit stupid. Like, I only drink 2, possibly 3, usually not the only 2 cans of Coke when I come home from work on a hot day, and I've also got about a litre, like about quarter gallon of water in there. And I used to stick a whole heap of cans in there and realised that essentially I couldn't fit other things in because I had too many cans in it. And you whack all these cans in, they've been in there for 2 or 3 days, and then you take them all out again to fit food in there. And you thought, well, that was a waste of blooming power and waste of effort on the part of the fridge. So only bother putting in what you know you're going to use. In other words, if you only ever drink, you know, 3 or 4 beers a night, don't go sticking 20 beers in the damn fridge. You know, go and drink your beers or sort of, you know, get into a few and then start refilling the fridge with them as you're taking them out. And another thing I would recommend if you've got a solar fridge is if you've got some groceries that you bought when you come home from work, like you went, you know, got out of work and then you went to the shop and then you come home, and you got home and it's still daylight. Like with me, I get home quite early, very early really, and I would recommend not wait until it's time to go to bed and then put them in there. Put them in there while it's still daylight, and basically within 3 hours or so they're completely cold, all your Coke's cold, all your stuff is cold. But you've done that while the sun's still up, so you're not unnecessarily flattening your battery. And so that's, you know, make use of the sun while the sun's out and the power's coming through the panels while you can. And, you know, that's just a tip on if you're a bit limited on batteries or you're having trouble with your battery sort of deteriorating, or, you know, you sort of got someone's semi-truck battery that you're using temporarily, but it's not sort of holding up to it because it wasn't starting the truck too well and that's why you got it, sort of thing. You know, keep things like that in mind. Another thing I will tell you, you may assume that because you've got a smaller compressor, like a smaller wattage compressor, you're going to somehow save power. Not really. Between what I've experienced with the Waco and this fridge, the Engel Sowa Fuji swing motor is super duper efficient compared to anything else. You know, most of these fridges that we have here use a Danfoss compressor. It's a German built compressor, as the Waco has that in it, and so do some other ones. And I mean, Wacos also have cheap ones. There's other brands that have cheap ones, but the larger Wacos and some of the other brands use the Danfoss compressor. I think it's BDF35 or something they call it. But that compressor compared to the Sowa Fuji spring motor, God blimey, there's no comparison. The thing uses about a third the power. But if you're comparing, you know, one size fridge to another size fridge, or both of them that use a standard actual crankshaft style compressor, which most do, but the Sowa Fuji doesn't, then having a smaller wattage fridge won't mean you're going to save power. It often just means it runs more. It just runs longer. And that's it. You don't actually save it by having a big one. But what I will tell you is the smaller the motor, the less chance you're going to have current draw issues, as I had with the Waco, as many people have with Wacos, and you can see more on that in my solar fridge video. I explain a bit more about it. But it's good to have a smaller fridge motor because you don't have to draw as much current. You won't have current draw issues. But at the same token, don't think that by going to a smaller compressor, you're going to all of a sudden save power. It'll probably just run longer in comparative to freezing the same amount of goods, especially if you're comparing one brand with a crankshaft compressor and another brand with a crankshaft compressor, and one has a larger storage area than the other does. But yeah, that's about all I got to say, I think, on conserving fridge power and living without refrigeration, or limited refrigeration means. That's it.